Welcome to the 173rd installment of Ear to the Ground, the Land Stewardship Project's podcast on family farming, sustainable agriculture, local food systems, and local democracy. I'm Brian DeVore, editor of the Land Stewardship Letter. Just about everyone involved in Midwestern agriculture agrees that cover crops are a good idea. Growing rye, radish, and other plants on corn and soybean fields that are normally bare or even plowed up from fall until spring reduces erosion, soaks up extra nutrients, and builds long-term soil health, making those acres more drought-resistant and biologically resilient in general. Unfortunately, in most of the American Corn Belt, cover crops are not a common practice. Narrow planting windows, lack of proper seed and equipment, and more than a few misperceptions about this practice have kept the majority of farmers from making cover cropping a regular part of their operations. However, one state has become an exception when it comes to cover cropping. In just a few short years, Indiana has gotten almost 1 million acres of cropland planted to cover crops. On a percentage basis, no other Corn Belt state is even close to having that much land protected with live plants during the long brown months that come between the growing seasons. Those plants are not only covering the surface of fields, but also sending roots into the soil profile, where they feed microbes and break up compaction. It turns out Indiana's success with cover crops is no accident. During the past few years, farmers, conservation agencies, scientists, and agribusiness firms in the Hoosier State have been working together to make cover cropping and other soil health measures a consistent part of the landscape. Called the Conservation Cropping Systems Initiative, this effort has become a national model for utilizing public and private resources to not only get farmers started with cover crops, but also to provide them the long-term support needed, so this practice becomes a permanent part of their operations. I recently spent a few days in Indiana attending field days and talking to farmers, soil scientists, and natural resource professionals about the Conservation Cropping Systems Initiative. In the first of 3 podcasts on the initiative, I talked to Barry Fisher, a soil health specialist with the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service. Fisher, who helped launch the initiative, talked to me about how it uses a combination of farmer-to-farmer education, cutting-edge agronomic science, and support from agribusiness firms to make cover cropping part of a wider soil health systems approach. Fisher emphasized that the key to successfully spreading the cover crop gospel is using farmer educators who can not only talk conservation, but dollars and cents as well.
Wanted the information to be science-based, but we also knew that it had to be delivered in a format that is practical and logical for farmers to adopt. The best place to get that was from some of the top conservation farmers that we had in the state. So we went on a recruitment mission to some of those top conservation farmers that had really good soil health, good soil management practices, and then also selected farmers that had good economics data, good record keeping, and good communication skills. And so if we're going to get farmers talking to other farmers, we actually gave them and offered them some training in presentation skills too. So we've got now a cadre of farmers, across the state that broad-reaching in their enterprises and their crop rotations and experience. But the result has been just fantastic. The way they're received at different workshops, and we help them with get them their travel and some of those things, and reimburse them for some of their time. But at the same time, they're the kind of people that want to share, and that's really important too.
Yeah, how many farmers are kind of doing this now?
Well, we've got 12 farmers that are at their farm. We're also collecting data, collecting economics data, collecting soil health data, collecting nutrient and yield data, and so we're building a big data set from 12 farms. Beyond that, we have as many as 10 additional affiliates that work with us on helping exchange technologies and education and those kinds of things. So, and then we also have some of the Purdue University farms and some actually local county and soil and water conservation district farms that are part of the overall hub concept within our conservation cropping system initiative.
So one thing that really struck me, and I think it was on display here at this field day here at Moody Farms, was this whole idea of a team approach, in that we had Ray Weil come in and speak about soil health and the experience in the Chesapeake Bay, but then we went out to the field itself, and we had somebody who is a cover crop seed dealer We had somebody who modifies equipment and sells equipment and offers services to plant cover crops, and kind of that whole package deal. I think that sounds like that's an important part of this as well.
Anytime, if a farmer's considering making this major shift to their operation, there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of risk involved in making major changes to your operation. So we have to bring all the players together that can make that successful. And certainly it's going to be more than just agency people. It's going to be more than just extension people. We've got to have the retail industry. We've got to have the equipment people, the seed industry, and then, of course, the farmers and researchers also. So we try to combine all of those partners and players at each of these workshops, and then we also it's a constant communication between all of us, so that we keep the technology and the science and the economics and all the information going forward. So we want everything to be cutting edge technology that we're delivering.
I think one message that you kind of have been getting across, and the farmers have as well when they speak, is that we've maybe known a long time that cover crops can produce all these environmental benefits, but now is an exciting time because we're starting to see the economic benefits on the farm, and so it's coming at probably really a fortuitous time in that there may be some pressure down the road. And I know one of the arguments you made yesterday at a presentation was, hey, look, we can head off maybe this regulation if we're really proactive on this.
Well, that's certainly true. And the beauty is that most of the things that help us benefit the environmental side of things, we can also see economic benefits. It was said today that we're not very efficient in utilizing sunlight, that free sunlight and free resources, the free CO2 that's out there that plants can use to put into the soil. So in our normal 80 to 90 day window, when our normal cropping system is using those and capturing sunlight and producing carbon into the soil, and that's a very short period of time considering we got a whole season and a lot of extra free sunlight. So cover crops are doing so much more for us to help capture that sunlight, capture that CO2, put that CO2 in the form of carbon and organic matter back in the soil, feed the biology in the soil during those off months. It gives us an ability to add diversity to our not very diverse cropping system. So it gives us that ability where we really couldn't get that integrated into the system before. Even in a no-till system, we've reduced the disturbance. We can improve, erosion control, and we can do a lot of beneficial things. But when we integrate a cover crop, a diverse mix in there, it's amazing how that system takes off.
And it sounds like another important message is it's not just a matter of adapting this one piece, the cover cropping, that it has to be part of a system approach.
Absolutely, and that's a big part of our conservation cropping system initiative. That's why we called it such a long name, I guess. Cover crops are kind of the new thing that people are looking at a lot, but really you need to prescribe the right cover crop that matches your crop rotation, and you've got to integrate that into, if you're going to be reducing tillage and you're using a no-till system, it has to complement the other parts of the system. And so then you probably have to ultimately adapt your nutrient management too, to once again complement your no-till system, complement the fact that you're using cover crops and maybe a different crop rotation. So the whole of the system far exceeds the sum of its parts. And it all has to be managed together as a system. And when we get that done, and that's why it takes all of these players to help us with the technology and get the system in place, when you get that in place, the economic returns and the resilience of that cropping system just explodes.
I think the figure is being thrown around here that maybe around 1 million acres are cover crop now, or can you go through a little bit some of the results you've seen? And over how many years have we seen that growth?
A huge explosion here lately. We ran our fall transect. We've always done a tillage transect in Indiana to keep track of where tillage trends are going. We added a fall transect to the same exact route this year just to get a better handle on where our cover crop acres were. And we thought we had between 500,000 and 1 million acres, and as we got our transect results in, sure enough, we're well over 1 million acres of cover crops in Indiana. So that's a huge amount when just back in 2005, 2007, that time frame, we would have been in more like a 20,000 acre range for the whole state. So it's really grown fast, especially in the last 5 years. And we also cater with NRCS and with the state programs and a lot of the cost share programs. We tend to cater and create an advantage to those people that are integrating a system. So if we can provide these risk management funding mechanisms, we want to steer those toward the system approach first, so that farmer can see the true benefit of this, so that if the money runs out, they'll continue on with this system.
That's really pretty amazing. I wonder if you could step back a little bit and think back on history a little bit. What kind of sparked all this? I mean, this is a real multifaceted approach. It isn't just saying, well, here's this new technique, let's give it a shot. You had to train these farmers, set up these hubs, work with these other groups, private businesses. I mean, was there some watershed event or something out there that really sparked an interest on the part of the NRCS here or the Department of Ag or something? Or
Well, one thing an advantage we've had in Indiana for a long time is we've had a very strong partnership between our federal, state, local agencies. And so even in the early 2000s, we were looking at energy packages, trying to cut energy costs on farms and things. And when you started looking at these cropping systems started making sense. And so that sort of brought some of the partners together where they said, it makes a lot of sense to put an energy package together. And so we always had like state programs, federal programs, and county programs. It happened at that time that it made most sense to work together on some of those. So we had some of those energy bundles, if you will, going across our Indiana Conservation Partnership. But there came a point in the late 2000, about 2009, 2010, when a group of farmers got together and they said, look, this is just too important. We're going to have to figure out what it's going to take to bring the industry on board, bring a bunch of people, all of the players on board. And I will have to say it was farmer driven. We had some farmer leaders that just took this by the reins and said, and they actually corralled our agency leadership, pulled them aside and said, here's what we think ought to be our priorities for Indiana. And you know what? Our leadership had the fortitude to see that these guys were brilliant in their thought process, and it did make sense for all of our agencies to join together and come. And it was a farmer-driven thing, I will have to say.
Ray Wiles spoke a little bit yesterday and today about the experience in Chesapeake Bay, and they've had great results getting cover crops on, but he seems to express a little bit of concern that it's because it was basically paying farmers to plant these cover crops, kind of a top-down approach. They aren't having these conversations about systems approaches and changing farming systems, and it seems like he's really likes what he sees here, in that you guys are it is from the farmers. They're talking about not just how can I get a higher payment for this, but whether there's a payment there or not, how is this going to benefit my farm in the long term? That seems to be a very important part of this.
I think so. There's no question, if you want something to happen very, very fast, pass a regulation. That is a very efficient way to make a thing happen. However, it stymies innovation and creativity. We're trying the approach of really ramping up education, information, technical exchange, so that the innovation is in the forefront. And innovation is ultimately how we're going to solve a lot of these problems. And it's not going to be a single practice. It's not going to be a single shiny bullet, or silver bullet that's going to make this happen. It's going to take real innovation. And so we can't take the chance on stymieing the innovation with just a flat regulation. And so I'm not saying that regulation won't eventually come to some degree, but we're trying our very best to push the innovation part out in front. And I think that's what the farmers prefer. I think ultimately it's what the regulators prefer. I haven't talked to very many people in EPA that are just dying to get to regulate something. They really want this voluntary approach and this innovative approach to work, and they really are on board with our soil health initiatives and improving soil health, and they really like our conservation cropping system initiative as a voluntary, proactive way to get some of this environmental concerns taken care of. That's the funny thing, that anytime you can just open up dialogue between two seemingly adversarial people with different roles, then it's amazing how everybody learns from each other. And sometimes you just need to be made aware of well, that can't work, or maybe that could work, and or that is a concern. I didn't know that was a concern. And once you bring about that awareness, most people really, really want to do the right thing. You have to understand that we all live here, so most of the time, if there's a logical path to a better way, a better system, most people will take it.
What's now that you guys are a few years down the road here, what's the biggest barrier? You were talking to a lot of farmers, a lot of people who are involved in this. What's the biggest barrier that they're running into right now that's maybe not getting more than 1 million acres out there?
I would have to say inconsistency of message. The farmers are getting information from so many different sources, from so many different directions. And, there's really good researchers in different sides of different things that come up with a single bit of research that may be conflicting with another research. And so the farmers are having a hard time sorting all this out. So one of our number one priorities in all this is to bring consistency of message. And that's where we have all the researchers at the table. We bring industry to the table. We bring the farmers to the table and try our very best to say, have some continuity of message. Because if you're getting mixed messages from 5 different places telling you to do 5 completely different things, the first thing you're going to do is drop back and just keep doing what you've been doing. So consistency of message is probably our single biggest roadblock. I think that's what we're trying our very hardest to do is get continuity.
You can read more about the Conservation Cropping Systems Initiative in the article King of the Cover Crops, which appears in the number 4, 2015 edition of the Land Stewardship Letter. It's available at www.landstewardshipproject.org. If you have comments or suggestions about this podcast, contact Brian DeVore at bdevore@landstewardshipproject.org, or you can call 612-722-6377. Thanks to Laura Borgendale, Western Minnesota musician, for Ear to the Ground's theme music. And a special thank you to all of Land Stewardship Project's members who make initiatives such as this podcast possible. If you're not a member, visit landstewardshipproject.org to learn how you can support LSP. Thanks for listening.